I've been meaning to react to the second part of this for ages and just haven't. I think this is the last part of these factions specifically. He has more videos about Warhammer.
In a two-part series on the Warhammer races. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, we do the Imperium of Man. You can check that out in the description, and I would highly recommend you watch that to get context for this episode. If you already have, go ahead and keep on watching. So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we can now talk about chaos, which involves humans again, but a little bit less. We also got demons and shit.
I just felt someone grab my ass.
What?
Like hard, Nick.
So, as I've mentioned many times before, we've discussed the warp, the immaterium, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now, in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible, there are demons everywhere, things are crazy, all your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty, it is vast and tiny, it obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are 4
Did he say eldritch?
that permeate in chaos and the
Sir?
warp. These are the 4 major chaos gods. And if we wish to learn about chaos, we need to learn about
Edward
each and every
Elric?
single one of these chaos
Eldrick?
gods. First up, we have Khorne, and he is the easiest.
Khorne.
Khorne is your classic Satan. He is all about anger, murder,
Skull for the skull
fighting,
throne.
blood, guts, death. You've
Blood
heard the
for the
term,
blood
blood
gods.
for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. That's Khorne. The whole idea is that he is all about the fury and strength of battle. He doesn't care where blood comes from, so long as blood is flowing.
I only know about this because when we would play Total War Warhammer with our friends, Gull really liked playing Khorne. So that is the only reason why I know blood for the blood god, skull for the skull throne.
He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death, 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 death. That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up, you have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch is the god of change.
I do not like
However,
that mouth
the god
on
of
his
change
codpiece.
permeates in so many different other ways. He's the most eldritch of all the demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can. Tzeentch is unknowable.
Imagine, it's like, kiss me on my mouth, and you're like, which one?
Everything that makes sense, he will and won't do. Every future and setting and every type of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone while also completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen.
he can go down on
and
you
also
without
that none of it's going to happen. You would ask
and be able to still look in your eyes,
that
you know?
question leads to 3 more questions, and those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks 4 answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really? And are you even asking the questions, or are you simply giving paths to answers and other horse shit?
Oh god, he's
Tzeentch
a philosophy major.
I'm gonna fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable, and that's what the God of Change is about. Very bizarre, and he likes birds a lot. I don't know why. Next up, we got Papa Nurgle. Papa Nurgle, he loves you for who you are. Probably not. He will murder you just the same. But Papa Nurgle is about rot, pestilence, death, and decay. He is the end of everything. Him and Tzeentch do not like each other very much because where Tzeentch represents change and adjustment, Nurgle represents stagnation and death. He is all about miasma and pestilence and large bloat and pus and organs and people just being sedentary, sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay and die. Nothing is certain besides decay and death. All of us will end up the same way, and broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition. So the joke that Nurgle always loves you is generally because of that, because we all end up the same. We all rot, and we all die and wither. That's Nurgle, and he's got a general theme of course, pestilence and different kinds of diseases.
Yeah,
and sickness and things
mosquitoes.
of that nature. That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and he chunk. Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and that is Slaanesh, also known as the Prince of Pleasure or the God of Unspeakable Excess. Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex, but it's not only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want to make stuff. Slaanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked to not just 11, but more like 17. See, we'll discuss Slaanesh a little bit more when we talk about the Eldar, because they done fucked up, but it or whatever is mainly about just the excess of emotions, and therefore sex is generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain and torture, lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs. Slaanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism, and of course that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of their models have like exposed nipples and stuff, and that is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything, mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear, because it is unspeakable excess, the Prince of Pleasure, everything in excess to the point where it is just sheer frightening. That is Slaanesh in a nutshell. A little bit bizarre and a little hard to describe sometimes, but as we talk more about the Dark Eldar later in this video, you'll understand it far better and far more than you'd
skin
want to.
off.
Now, you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying, screwed up, and just frightening things, right? Well, the thing is that, of course, one, your mind is put into the warp and the immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or, say, low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally prefer.
So if you're a red shirt, you're fucked in this universe. You're getting immediately taken over by the demons, and whatever one happens to grab you first, that's where you're stuck the whole rest of your life.
However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest, trial by combat, and honor. Khorne will never lie to you. Khorne will never stab you in the back. Khorne isn't about conniving and scheming. Khorne is about straight up mano-y-mano, you versus me, get in the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now. It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side of the coin. Him and Zeke,
the Chad faction,
generally don't get along because Zeech is that conniving schemer, but he's also about the idea of hope. Where there is change for your predicament. There is change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to bend the world to your will, the idea that your fate is not set in stone, but in reality that you control your own destiny and can control it whenever you want, the changer of ways. That is Zeech. And of course, Zeech and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality, an ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality, that ability that this is over. We are all the same, and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot.
Hey, Cassandra.
And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slaanesh is a lot...
So it's communists, right? Communists are the ones that are like, everybody's the same. Everybody's equal. They're the communist faction.
more simple. While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion. Slaanesh embodies happiness. Slaanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, you know, bam style of pleasure, but also everything else like
Bam.
food and drink and air on your cheek and sunlight, the feeling, emotion and feeling. All of that is also represented with Slaanesh. So you have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody? I don't really got an answer for you on that one. My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts, even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right now, but I don't know. You need a super bad guy. You already got the Imperium of Man. You need somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got demons. Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him. So cool. So combining all this together on the tabletop, Chaos Demon.
Wait, did he have 2 sets of arm and the second set of arms was another? Oh, no, it was another head. Okay, I was like, I thought that this was a second set of arms and the second arm had another head on it. And I was like, but no, it's
I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him. So cool. So combining all this together on the tabletop, Chaos Demons are generally very melee based. They run in, go really hard. You have lots of summoning and conjuring, tons of spells. Generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger.
Look at them
giant
dogs.
demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys. Demons are as they seem. Demons. Nurgle is slow, Khorne is super scary in melee, you've got Tzeentch who are far more into psychers and spellcasting, and then Slaanesh who is all melee, really fast, but squishy,
and they're running on
but in lots of hordes
dinosaurs.
of tons of melee and pain.
That's pretty
damage,
dope.
of course. So overall, the demons
Dinosaurs
are
with looks like
huge.
Knife heads. Like knife tongues. And them whips. It's gotta suck to be like the pleasure demon that doesn't got no hands.
Really fast, but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40k and a massive threat to almost every single faction with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into the other 9 Primarchs we didn't talk about, which are the Chaos Space Marines. So Horse and all of his boys, all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things.
Chaos
just
Boys.
Like the Adeptus Astartes, the Angels of Death, the regular Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just specialize in different kinds of things. And also a lot of the Primarchs have ascended into greater demons? They're demon Primarchs at this point. Gigantic, horrifying man-demon hybrids that are pretty awesome, if I'm gonna be honest. They look really cool. But them and their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus for everyone else. Considering the raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I gotta write them down, but you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to Slaanesh. These people, they are some messed up people. They're just sensory overload, tons of drugs, tons of torture. And I think Fulgrim is a demon Primarch right now, and oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like, at least on the tabletop, because Emperor's Children are not good people. You've got the Iron Warriors, which are kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists, with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided. They just kind of serve chaos in a general aspect instead.
Look at Bricky being lazy and not doing his research. Doesn't even know what the 3rd Primarch of the space... What are these guys called? Chaos Space Marines? How am I supposed to know the lore if you won't teach me the lore, Bricky?
Choosing one of the 4, but the Iron...
You need to tell me what his name is, Bricky. I need to know.
Warriors are big on the siege and fortification, and they're basically entirely against the Imperial Fist and a major rival. Perturabo, I believe, is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass. You've got the Night Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is dead, which is good, because he's a sick fuck. But the Night Lords are generally about terrorizing people, and terrorism. They're generally about fear, and rightly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch Angron, still alive, also excited to see. Angron,
he's got heads as a necklace.
If you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch you will ever know. Angron removed parts of his brain that didn't make him angry, so he could be angrier. Angron. Fucker's mad. You've got the Death Guard with Primarch Mortarion. They actually have their own special codex and their own major army on the tabletop. Mortarion himself is actually one of the models, and look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking. Of course, Nurgle based, obviously.
I don't think stuff like this looks cool. Am I wrong? One, I'm really not a huge fan of, like, gross stuff. Shock, I'm sure. But, like, there's just too much going on here. I can't take everything in. There's, like, I don't think this kind of stuff looks cool. But again, I'm not the market for this. So obviously, have I seen Eldari? No. I don't know, again, I'm not the market for this, so it's not surprising that I don't think that this looks, like, cool, but, like, there's too much, and it's very, very detailed, but I think that, like, too much detail can be a bad thing.
So very slow, but very tanky. You've got the Word Bearers with Primarch Lorgar. Lorgar is, I believe, still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems in the beginning.
I tend to like more simple designs, or like designs that don't try to go all over the place. Like, I'm one of those people where if I have a quote-unquote theme, I probably do it too much in the other direction, where I put too much of the design and it being similar, like flowers being the main design of my VTuber. I wanted to put flowers everywhere, and like green and purple is about all you're gonna see. And anything that has to do with me, like wood color, green, purple, lilacs, like that's the only thing you're really gonna see. And I'm kind of like that with everything. I have a main thing that I want to stick to and incorporate that throughout the entire design. So it can kind of feel a little samey, you know, if you want to do a counter argument. But that's just like the kind of style that I prefer.
At least I blame them for it. They're little assholes. You got the Black Legion with Primarch Horus. Get fucked, nerd. You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius Omegon.
I don't get that reference.
Chaos, I think. And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd. The Thousand Sons also have their own book, just like the Death Guard. Magnus is also
Wait, is his actual title the Nerd?
a tabletop model. He looks super cool, as you can tell, and they're all super heavily Psyker and kind of Egyptian themed. They look pretty neat. But overall, with all of these Chaos Space Marine factions, you can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the most fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here? This is a really good way to describe the Chaos Space Marines. What the thick-headed fools with their broken corpse of an emperor fail to understand is that not only can they never defeat us, but they cannot hide or flee or shield themselves from the triumph of chaos. They are finite and we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it consumes them. Thus, you can see chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance. We are them, grown strong, evolved. We are them, but so much more. As hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable.
Man, they wordy. And man, by the time their leader finishes that manifest, half of their army has to be dead. Hello, Nail.
You could probably get rid of...
Like, all I've learned is that everybody in this universe, they're just all theater kids. They're all edgy theater kids. Because they have to have this, like, soliloquy manifesto that goes on forever and ever about how cool they are. And it's just like, we get it. You think you're cool.
Space Marines, a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines, that is. But every soul that dies goes to the warp. Every Chaos soul will end.
And that's me making fun of, like, the characters in character, not me making fun of, like, the writers of the material or anything. Like, I understand that that's how it's supposed to be. I'm saying that if I were in the universe of the 40K universe, I would think everybody are just blowhards. And then I would get killed for heresy.
Up back in the warp. And depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return at some point. Chaos is unstoppable. The warp is unending. And while maybe there is at some point some way to stop them somehow, the resources to do so, the requirements to do so, are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment that really it's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed. Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number, their legions are everywhere, and yeah, they're pretty scary. So, I promise, we're done with humans now. Let's talk about some Xenos.
I mean, they look kind of human to me.
So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper-specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were, as well, responsible for the creation of Slaanesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. See, back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient, millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery! Debauchery! When everything you have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant.
I'm sorry. What's up with the... It's elf. It's an elf lore app. I get it. But, like, this is my kink right here. Also, do you have to do the loudest construction in existence right now? I'm trying to film a video here. This is my kink right here. Like, dark, kingly figure with collared scantily clad lady. Ugh, love it.
Because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated, and this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craft World Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craft Worlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away
Easy to
from this
remember.
depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more
the
horrible,
boars.
depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom! Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got fucked up. It was so bad that it literally
it's what they
ripped
wanted,
a
right?
warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia. And it is horrifying. So this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population
Horny on
except
main.
for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack, that birth of Slaanesh, only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh, craft world or not. What about those people in the Webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son. Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny. And now let's talk about cute plastic.
I know that this is a video, but I still feel the need to I need to let this man finish. I don't want to interrupt him. But as someone who most definitely has ADHD, trying to struggle to hold on to a thought while he is reading something as complicated as that is challenge level impossible. I wanted to ask my apparently knowledgeable Warhammer 40k lore people in here. Is there... I can finish first. I don't want to interrupt. Even though it's a video that I could pause at any point, I don't want to upset people. Because, it's so funny. Okay, hold on. I have another tangent before I get into this tangent. Well, okay, first I'll ask my question, allow you guys time to type, and then I will go on my tangent. My question was... is there an end result if Slaanesh eats all of the eldari? Does something happen? And if so, what is it? And then my tangent was how you could just never make people happy. It's even making it hard to focus on this video because I'm I don't really know how people react to videos and how much talking is too much talking. Should I, I had somebody in literally the duality of man in my comment section for my last react video was just play the video, you talk too much. And then somebody else being I stopped watching your video because you didn't pause and talked over the video, and I'm partially deaf and I couldn't differentiate the you two speaking over each other. So I was like, wait, which do I do? And so I want to hear my opinion. That's the problem that I've always wondered. I don't know if I'm particularly a good reactor because, again, I go kind of head empty and I don't really have a lot of opinions all of the time. Slaanesh grows more powerful, might fuck over the other chaos gods. Yeah, I didn't know if maybe after, if the goal was to eat all the eldari, what does he do after? Who does he start eating next? The 4 chaos gods are part of something called the eternal game. It's essentially just tug of war. The balance of power between them switches every so often. I see.
Models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of Craft World, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craft World is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard-hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, why this species would participate in, like, battles and wars and stuff. Like, why would they participate in the tabletop, essentially? Because if their species is literally dying, why would you risk, like, losing a bunch of them to, like, war and stuff?
Still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is
Monkey.
a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world. Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop,
True.
exactly what I said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks, and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry-on. It is a message even a human can understand. Eldar. So,
I mean, I know,
Drukhari.
simple.
Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
Is that not just Katarina from League of Legends? That's what I said. Is that not just Katarina from League of Legends, but with sharp teeth?
On today's episode of How Fucked Up Is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar.
Would?
In
No.
the webway, they didn't
No, Pedro, no. No wouldn't. No.
quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh like has them, but it has them on like by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40k. These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go.
No, it's
you
not
are
bad.
invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half.
Blah.
Painful, but not the worst. The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough. The Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based like stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy, a fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand, or perhaps a wonderful hat, while you are, of course, still alive
Why
and
did
breathing.
I laugh
and
at that?
you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity. And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40k. They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesh's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled away. So long as they...
Okay. I don't usually condone the idea of eradication, but I think, and this might be, you know, a bit of a hot take, I think maybe we should consider it. Now hear me out, hear me out. I think I think everybody in the 40k universe should just maybe gang up on them. You know, maybe. Just one time. Just everybody, you know, work together once, one time. Just to get rid of these guys. Just one time.
They keep doing this, Slaanesh is like, "You're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards." That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they're hit
squishy.
generally even.
Easy. See, they're squishy. Just everybody. You don't even have to send everyone. There's not a lot of them. You know, they're squishy. Just everybody say, okay, here's what we're gonna do, guys. We're gonna get a council together, like the UN, and we're all gonna send one ship worth of troops. Right? Everybody dedicates one ship from all of the other factions. And they go and they destroy these people. And then once they're destroyed, free for all. Because they love to fight. And whoever comes out on top, whatever. But maybe just once we could work together just one time.
Even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar and Sev from Public Commando. A quote from Mr. Vecht. "We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed." Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter, Andy? Don't you want to have some fun?
The harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar.
Listen.
They're demonic.
Listen, that was past me. I made a mistake. I've been educated. And now I'm reformed.
Clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more
Jin.
clown theme. They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to Craft Worlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god, but it's the Eldar's laughing god? And these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns, okay? So imagine the things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals, would find funny And this is the god of that. It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly. Honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaanesh somehow.
I see. So they're old English monarchy.
But their main thing is guarding that black library. And the Harlequins just... They're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good in melee. They're demon clowns. I'm not sure. I got a quote. It is too easy for an eldar to embrace the obscene virtues of chaos, for Slaanesh is nothing more than a manifestation of the eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the eldar, and to the dark side of the eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. Harlequins, Drukhari, Eldar, they are an anomaly that make humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They're all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar. Now.
Well, I guess, like, I don't get the comparison to Jinn, because, like, Jinn, I guess it was really just the hey Moss Man, just the masks, because like Jin is an artist, so he doesn't remind me of a clown, but like I feel like there's lots of other League stuff. Oh, he was just comparing the Harlequins in 40k of the Eldars to Jin, and I was like, I didn't see really any comparisons to Jin other than Jin wears a mask. But
bugs.
Mom, they following me, Mom. They following me. The bugs.
The bug!
The tyranids. Now, you want to talk something a lot more fun, a little more simple
No.
than all this crazy Eldar shenanigans? Let's talk the tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You want to know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were. Apparently StarCraft was supposed to be a 40k game in the beginning, hence why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg, and the Imperium of Man. Like, kind of Space Marine-y, those Marines, huh? They look a little bit Space Marine-y to me. Maybe. I don't know. You really fucked up on that one, Games Workshop, didn't ya? Tyranids are a giant infestation of unfathomable proportions. These are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about absorbing as much biomass as they possibly can to evolve and mutate to be extremely potent and powerful and kill and eat anything in their path. They are probably
Ew.
the least evil faction in all of 40k because all they want to do is eat shit. They want to nom nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also, this Tyranid hive mind has a presence in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp. They have a thing called the shadow in the warp specifically, where when they are coming in to invade a planet, they have this weird ability to kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp because you need that for interstellar travel. So with people unable to call for help from the Tyranids, these are just easy pickings. And an entire giant Tyranid hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will massacre, absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other tyranids into even more advanced monsters. They come in so many varieties too, all based on what is important. Tiny little ripper swarms for scouting and having little dudes eat people up, to the hormigons, termagants, and gene stealers, all the way to the hive guard and the exocrines and the swarm lord, to hive tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the hierophant bio-titan.
Ooh.
The tyranids come in all forms and sizes depending on what they require. They are extremely good at anti-biological weaponry. There is no way you can plague them or blight them. They have
Honestly, I think a lot of bug races look really cool as long as you don't have, like, spooters anywhere. Like, giant, like, mantis-looking things like that, I think actually look really dope. Especially for, like, enemies.
extremely strong armor, carapaces and such. Tyranids are nigh perfect organisms and are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they
That bug has a sword. I'm sorry, he has 2 swords. I didn't see the second one.
handle all of their genetic material. Keep feeding them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you know what the most terrifying part of the Tyranids is? We might be surrounded. There have been like around 6 or 7 Tyranid hive fleets. Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets. And they've all arrived in the galaxy.
What? Bricky, I love you, but what was the point? What was the point of putting this image on the screen? What is this supposed to convey to me? I can't read. I can't read any of these words. I don't know what any of this is. So your point is getting lost because I can't see. I don't have enough 40K knowledge to understand what I'm looking at. Other than I look, it looks like I'm looking at a solar system because I see solar in the center. So I'm assuming that that big yellow dot is the sun and the rest of them are planets, maybe? And I see Hive Fleet Kraken, Hive Fleet Gorgon, Hive Fleet Behemoth, Jormungandr. Oh, this is the known universe. Okay, well, I wouldn't know that. I don't know anything of, I don't know. I feel like that kind of thing would need to be explained because then bugs are arriving from outside. Oh, so he's saying that he thinks that the whole known universe is surrounded by bugs? Oh.
From different
Haha,
points,
Pedro.
different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through. And that is horrifying because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of
God,
stories.
how is that
off
sun
of
so bright?
one hive mind genocidal monsters. All these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. Oh, I mean, as cool as there are, there's some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One Eye. You can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are simple bugs. If you want something a little more complex, talk gene stealer cults.
I can have all the pot I want, I get around faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Gene stealer cults are a special brand of Tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting them, they can rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular.
Is this one idiot just getting shot over here? Imagine somebody painted this, right? A rendition of the battle. And you're the guy that gets remembered as the one guy who got shot.
Humans pray and believe into their Tyranid hive mind gods. And these brood lords and I think they're called patriarchs all can turn an entire world all based into gene stealers. And these are called gene stealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned.
Hey, look, it's Alien.
Into nothing but servants to the Tyranid
Also,
masters just by
cute
infecting
logo.
them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit. They also have this cool like Mad Max look, which is really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though, because you, dingus, stepped on a bug in middle school. Asshole. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium.
bad.
With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake. This horror, this abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale. And all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineered monsters it
gross.
unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey. Tyranids, they're cool. But are they as cool as the orcs?
Every screen's gone red! That means I'm super fast!
Orcs, 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 orcs. I fucking love orcs. So, yes.
That's the only thing that I know about this universe from you guys is that, yeah, everybody loves orcs.
The green monsters, the green tide, the green skins. These orcs, they are in fact a race in 40k. The orcs are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes, and they have got big old teeth, and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other. Orcs are so cool. Orcs don't have philosophy. Orcs don't have
Look at that fucking pirate with a pirate skull, or an orc skull as his skull. You can't see it. I'm so sorry. I forgot. I did. That's been like that for the whole video so far. I'm so sorry.
Existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest orc. You listen to that guy because he the biggest orc. He big orc. Big orc knows best. You win through the power of imagination. Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the orc is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? As an orc, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest orc is the man who understands everything. He is the boss. And orcs have this really weird, like, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me. Those are orcs.
They gave orcs a British accent?
Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war because you want to wage war. You got your boss over there, and you better listen to the boss, because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orcs. And then you can't fight because orc dead. And orc dead can't fight because orc dead. Orcs, they...
I feel like I would do really well in the orc faction. You know? I feel like I would do perfectly. Just listen to the big guy, try not to get yourself killed. I could do that.
Scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination that that machine will run, it'll run. If that machine's out of gas, you're driving that machine with your fellow orcs, and the biggest orc is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, some orc behind you is like, oh, Zog, we're out of gas. And the big orc is like, no, we're not. I filled the fucking gas tank up earlier. And all the other orcs are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you turn the fucking mech back on and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not, but it works through the power of imagination. They paint things red because it makes them...
They work off the power of gaslighting. They're the most powerful gaslighters in existence. The car literally stops on the center of the highway and the tank reads empty. You turn and say, the gas tank is empty. And the orc sitting next to you says, no, it isn't. And you look back and it says full. And you're like, oh, I guess it isn't.
Think that goes faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You wanna know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Orcs are also like ancient as hell. They're back in the Eldari time frame. But back then they were called orcs, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things. But they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard, and it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are tyranids, maybe more, who knows, but they keep on, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue. Orcs are entirely comic relief. Their stuff is slapped together that makes no sense. Their vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work because they think it works.
I didn't know that.
They imagine that it works. Orcs care only about
I knew
who
that
is the
from
biggest
Total
orc,
War.
and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they issue a wa is just war in orc, they murder everybody and everything in this giant tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or the Imperium or Tau or anyone in between. They're just so they get to beat shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop, they are a total coin flip, and they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who plays orcs and is ever just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because when you play them, you are completely submitting yourself to RNG. So here's the thing. Guardsmen, Imperial Guards.
Really? Because usually people who play RNG-based decks tend to get the most mad when RNG doesn't go their way, it feels like.
When they shoot, they roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're just super well trained. Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher. But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything, from the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter. Half of their stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you fuck up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly. But the thing is if you roll well, you roll high, and you keep rolling high, you are going to crush people. And if you don't, you lose. I mean, that's what you get when you play orcs. That's what happens when you play orc. It's a coin flip, which is why you can't be a salty bitch when you play orcs, because
I could.
Things won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice. You're playing a dice game. But if you're going to have fun and you want to be stupid and you want to be silly, you're going to play some damn orcs. But on the opposite side,
Because I played a lot of tabletop RPGs, and I hated systems like that where you had to roll a 5 or 6 or else it's a failure. I hate not being successful on things I think I should be good at, so as much fun as orcs sound, I probably wouldn't play them because I would just get too frustrated that I just wasn't winning. But the Gambit? Yeah, I definitely, I'm the type of person that likes to specialize in what I want to be good at. So like, if I was like, I want to see, but that's the thing, right? Okay, so I played a system called, fuck, it's like kind of an offshoot Blades in the Dark, but it's not. What was the name of it? Gull, if you're here, help. What was the name of that one? It starts with a V. Fuck. Help. It doesn't matter, but if she's listening, she might tell me. But essentially, oh god, what were the name of the monsters? What were they called? No. It's gonna bug me forever until she tells me, but she's not listening. She's probably sleeping again. Like Visair, but it's not Visair. Essentially, it was a world where like monsters existed, but they were called a specific thing. And you rolled a pool of dice, and each 5 or a 6 was a success. And it was very frustrating to play a system like that. Because you could roll 13 dice and not get a single. Or wait, maybe 6s were the only success. I don't remember. But it could get very frustrating to play a Vesair? That's what Vesair is what I'm thinking. Hold on. I don't think it was called Vesair though. Vesair tabletop game. It's not Vesair. Go! Wake up! I need you to remind me. It doesn't
Part
matter.
of the
It's
fun
not the
part
point.
of this. Let's talk about the necrons. The necrons are
Oh
spooky,
yeah, it's
scary
fun until you
skeletons and very
roll.
grim,
It's fun until you roll 13 dice looking for a single 6 and you don't get one.
dark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators, and they still look that way, but now they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: eldari, eldar, krork, orc, necron, necron tier. So the necron tier were this race of generally kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, but because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They really were looking for immortality. They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and just stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners in Halo or the Xel'Naga in StarCraft, right? These Old Ones were these strong, pretty much omnipotent beings, and they, of course, knew the key to immortality. So the Necrons went to them and said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Not really, they were a lot more humble about it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war.
Imagine
with
they
them,
did.
kind of under this united banner. The Necron different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality to them. This was known as the
It was called
War in
Vaesen.
Heaven, and this is actually like a multi-stage war. Because during this war in heaven, they discovered the star gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan, or the Catan. These star gods were also very much like Old Ones, almost omnipotent beings, and they too had the key to immortality. And so the Necrons went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones, you, the Catan? And the Catan said yes. And in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek. So the Silent King of the Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them to accept this generous gift of immortality upon them. But this, of course, had been a horrendous trap, and the Necrons were dragged in chains to this biotransference where their flesh was stripped from them, replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell, as their souls were ripped from their body and fed to the Catan. And the Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons.
It didn't work.
This was their plan all along. They consumed the flesh and souls of the Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then with their new-founded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the Old Ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these Old Ones. The Old Ones did their best to stave it off. They even created other races, the Eldari and the Orcs, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron army and the Catan above them. But there was absolutely no possible chance for them. And the Old Ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy. Their entire
my phone is blowing up. I don't know if it's coming up on mic.
Removed, full-on 100% genocide. However, during all this, the Catan, so just
skeleton
infatuated
legs.
with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences, doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're gonna eventually hit each other at some point. And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the Orcs actually started pushing on the Catan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their Catan masters. And this revolt was bloody, as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were able to, just after suffering horrendous losses, were able
Phone
to
is
turn the
supposed to
tide
be
of the
on
war.
sleep
And they
because I'm at
took
work.
these Catan and they blasted them, because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands
So
of
distracted.
shards
I feel like
and
I haven't
entrap
listened to
them
a single
in
thing about the
giant
Necrons.
stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons. And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Orcs. And so what they did is they retreated into giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully theirs. And then some dingus Adeptus Mechanicus guy diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back and they see all these primitive races on their
Good job, idiot.
lawns, and
What are you, me, pressing a big red button or touching a console they shouldn't and just unleashing unknown horrors on the universe?
they think, get the fuck off of it. So the Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs. Now, on a tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots that when they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill, tons of crazy stuff. You can use the Catan themselves as units to fight with. It's pretty cool. The Necrons are one of the three major events in 40k. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty dang cool as well. Here's a good quote from a
You seem a
wonderful
lot
Dawn of War
cooler
game.
than the...
Lucky
Oh
creatures,
no, I was going to say
as
orcs,
long
but
last
orcs are
you
pretty
have
damn
found the
cool.
tranquility
Gaslighting
of
kings.
death. I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth.
Also, why is this one on his phone and not on paper? Necron's not important enough?
When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs, I was remade. Here, my brethren slumbered for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once
He seems like
more.
my kind of guy.
Necrons are also pretty smug. Trazen the Infinite especially. A little dickhead. But speaking of
Oh, you're talking about
dickheads,
Trazen.
last race, let's talk the Tau.
We made a fucking Wookiee.
The exact formation of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousands of
I can't wait to see why he's in a anime girl lower half.
years ago, in the 40k world that is, some Imperial navigation vessels were going around through different areas, and they saw a primitive race, blue people, smacking each other with sticks and stones. They thought, dumb Xenos race, who gives a shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau Empire. And now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this homogenous group. All species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their idea of the fundamental increase and help of all. In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets, being the ethereals, who are
Okay,
actually
some good
kind
guys,
of
question
dicks
mark?
and like to pull at strings a little bit, but then you have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group as this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him, his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what their mainly big shtick is, well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser rifles and rail guns. They got giant mechs with tons of missile pods and heavy rail rifles and rail guns and burst cannons and ion accelerators and void shields and all this stuff. And that is generally what the Tau's all about. But you're probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil. This doesn't sound very grim, dark Warhammer. And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying, grim, dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day, because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer didn't really like it that much. So, see, the Tau get a lot of hate, and a lot of that hate isn't necessarily unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40k universe very well. They lack that super
Yeah, they do seem
dark,
a little
dramatic,
out of
kind
place.
high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos or say the Orcs do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own specific style as well. The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while it isn't necessarily a bad
But the Necrons also kind of seem a little bit out of place in this universe, if I'm being honest, in terms of like visually.
thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at ranged combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have a million rules to make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun to gun. And if you're doing gun to gun, they're going to win every time because they're the Tau, and the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons for that, both from style and such. But this is actually one of the things I wanted to end this video with, is that the Tau, while they have their issues, you should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what you like. In Warhammer especially,
That is such a great, sentiment to express, because, like, just don't play against people that, like, if you don't enjoy a particular play style, just don't play with those people on both sides. Like, if people are going to be like mean and be like, no, you can't play this character, this like race or whatever, just don't play with them. And if like you really don't enjoy being bottlenecked to a very specific style, then don't play with somebody who only plays a faction that allows that. But like, everybody at the table is always just trying to have fun. Some people are trying to win, but like everybody's fun is subjective, and like I feel like a lot of times, especially in like competitive games like this, people forget to also prioritize the other person's fun when they're playing with them.
now factions get better and they get worse, they grow and then they fall. You should only be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time, is what you think is badass, because things change all the time. But the universe of Warhammer has so much going for it. Every faction has something interesting, every character has a story, and there's a million stories to be told. The universe is vast and exciting, and while it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these 2 videos, is anything you could take away is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much. Because with so much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done, you can find yourself having a pretty great time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it has been informative to you. If you'd like to see more of me, Bricky, you have twitch.tv/Bricky for my streams. You have my merchandise site in which I was wearing all of my merch, but underneath this because I had to wear this so it wasn't black or white for the green screen, which is a little unfortunate, but it's fine. If you'd like to see merch, it is in the description. Also, if you'd like to support me on my Patreon page at patreon.com/Bricky for more videos like this, then that would also be wonderful. So Twitch, merch, Patreon, anything if you want to support, that would be fantastic. I'd appreciate it. If not, I'm just stoked you got all the way to the end of the video, and that is enough for me. So I'm going to be having some more content like this out in the future. Thank you so much for sticking around this long and being with me through this pretty rough time. That's, I think, all I got. Also, before I go, let me leave you with my favorite Warhammer quote. He who scoffs at the power of the las gun has never ran through a field of 1,000 of them. Bye-bye.
That was good. I definitely might know some more things about the 40K universe than I did before. But it feels like even watching 2 hours of someone explain it, I haven't even scratched the beginning of the surface of this world. Do I have a favorite faction so far? I really like those assassin infiltrators from the first part. And obviously Space Wolves. And I also think the Necrons are pretty cool. And Orcs. Orcs are all... I'm coming around. I don't usually really like primitive races. It's not an aesthetic I particularly like. I don't really like savagery and stuff like that, but gaslighting as your main power, pretty dope. Yeah, that was a good time. Thanks everybody. If you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for watching. Bye. Mwah.